Hi, welcome to Introduction to Horses Helping Humans 101. I'm Chris Cook, President and CEO of Wild Horsemanship Center. Just really quick about us. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that specializes in helping PATH-certified therapeutic programs across the country regarding horse training, staff development, and also helping amplify the bond between horses and humans. So we have just completed a research project with the University of Florida in quantifying empathetic leadership and equine psychology as it regards to the training of therapeutic riding horses. So this presentation is going to discuss our Horses Helping Humans 101 workshop and give everyone just a brief detail on how we start to build a relationship and amplify what we call owning a skill or behavior as regarding a therapeutic horse. Today we're going to be covering the catch, prey-predator barrier, reading the horse, right brain versus left brain, friendly, bubbles, the horseman's handshake, personal space, leading, stick to me, zones, forehand and hindquarter yields, point to point, and serpentines with obstacles. So we need to remember when we are first playing with our horse that the relationship doesn't start in the arena. It actually starts in the pasture or in the stall where we keep the horse. Our horses recognize when we first enter their perception. So this means that how we catch our horse's attention or the relationship starts with the catch. So we want to learn first to catch our horse's mind and attention and draw our horses in, because if our horses are telling us that they don't want to be caught, that's already feedback into the relationship. It also might be feedback onto the pressure that we've been putting on them in terms of putting them in lessons and working with them. So we have to have an attraction for our horse. We have to have be a good place for our horses to want to be. So that might include rubbing and scratching and being able to give our horse something that is meaningful for them to come up to us. It might include giving them a cookie. But the main thing that we want to remember is that we want to draw our horses into us versus coming up and catching them, because the leader in the herd is he or she who moves their feet the least. So we have to keep in mind that when we are with our horses, there is a prey-predator barrier. Us as predators over thousands of years have been able to develop and hunt prey animals almost since the beginning of time. And our horses realize that. So we want to make sure that we don't get trapped into what we call direct line thinking, or only thinking about our goals and objectives. So have we ever had an experience that we have a horse that becomes sour? They might start bucking, biting, kicking, or even shying away and trying to find a quote-unquote escape or another way out of a situation. So what we want to be able to do is start to think like a horse, or you start using lateral thinking strategies. And how we bridge that gap is we start to use leadership exercises to become more influential to the horse. So how do we do this? We start by learning how to read the horse, recognizing our horse's moods. Also, we start to take a look at their body and their structure. Are their muscles tight and tense? Are their eyes relaxed, or are they wide and staring? What position are their ears? Are their ears forward or laying back? So we can start to read the horse and read into the strategies that we need to use by using these physical and indicators Why is this important? Well, this is important because the more that we're able to read our horse in situations, that we're able to help inspire our horse to want to do their job, or we might be able to prevent a situation from happening. If we recognize that a horse, for example, is getting tight and tense because it's entering an area of the arena that might be scary, we can use strategies to build that horse's confidence and also keep our riders safer in those situations. So one of the things that we need to start to look at is the sides of the horse's brain, left brain versus right brain. When we start to talk about right brain horses, we start to talk about fearful and reactive horses, horses that are using that instinct to either fight or flee the situation. Usually this is going to come after having some sort of perceived danger for the horse, and dangers that might not mean anything to us, like a plastic bag or a pole on the ground, might be something that for a horse is simulating a predator or predatory behavior. Right brain versus left brain, and reading our horse's emotions. So we start to look at right brain being the fearful and reactive side of the brain side of the brain that's closer to Mother Nature. You might have seen a horse that tries to spook or bolt out of a situation, or they may have just been showing tension. They're using their prey animal instincts to try to flee a potential danger or what they might feel is a potential predator. We can help our horses become more confident through a process of approach and retreat and having them start to seek the left side of their brain, so the confident side. This is also where learning happens. We want to be able to keep our horse in a learning frame of mind while whether we're training them or whether we are having them do lessons for therapeutic purposes, or maybe we're just out there in the pasture and associating with them daily. One of the ways that we do this is by using a friendly modality. So developing confidence through approach and retreat, being able to use a horse's thresholds. So the horse might perceive something as scary. Instead of taking the horse right up to it and trying to force them to approach an object, we might think of retreating away from the object first and building the horse's confidence when the horse shows signs of relaxation. So when the horse starts to put its head down, soften its eyes, being able to relax its muscles, starting to build confidence, and then reapproach. The most important part is that we want to have our horses seek comfort. So that's where we start to think about lateral thinking. So our goals and ideas are secondary to the horse's comfort and confidence. And another point to remember, it's not about the situation. It's not about the trailer. It's not about getting to our goals. It's about developing the horse's confidence and having the horse understand a skill and own a skill. So we want to understand that horses have bubbles or fields of energy around them. Usually horses have an oval-shaped bubble. And if you want to take a look at an example, you can watch horses play in the pasture, influencing each other's direction without physically touching each other. So that is understanding energy. We're understanding that horses can be influenced both by steady pressure or also by rhythmic pressure. And this is done by influencing the horse's flight zone. The flight zone is the distance that a prey animal will run from perceived danger. It's also the reason why, for example, when we go out and quote unquote lunge a horse, that we can put pressure behind them and they start to go forward. So once we start to play around with these concepts, we can use the lateral thinking concept as a way to start to enhance the relationship with the horse. So as we understand horses' bubbles, we want to start to think about being able to draw a horse into our personal space when we go to greet our horse. And when we go to greet our horse, like we said in the beginning, we want to make sure that we are starting to attract our horse's attention. Kind of like in this example here, we have a horse in our 180 round pen, and I'm backing away from it and drawing him into my personal space and creating a horse's nose with my hand. So my palm is down and my fist is closed, allowing him to smell my scent, just like another horse would out in the wild. What this does is it also starts to develop a bond between myself and this horse, and it allows him to think about catching me. So if we have our horses set up in pastures, how often do we have to walk up to our horses and catch them? If we're walking up to our horses and we're catching them, for example, they're standing and waiting for us to put a halter on them, we've already just told that horse that they're the leader because we took more footsteps to them than they did to us. So we want to start to think about drawing a horse into our energy by saying hello with the horseman's handshake, using patience to start to attract our horse, and understanding that the importance of this is our horses need to see us as a good place to be, and also it serves as an evaluation that if our horses aren't coming up to us, maybe that says something about the relationship that we're building. Personal space. So one of the things that we want to think about when we are talking about personal space is that our horses need to know the difference between invite and invade. A horse can invade your space with 2 ears and 2 eyes and looking very friendly. But if we haven't asked for our horse to come into our personal space, technically they are invading. So we first need to understand that we can use blocks in order to keep our horse out of our personal space. So using our hands and our arms to be able to ask the horse to stay out of our personal bubble. This is also done through tools, not just through our bodies, but also having the proper tools for communication. And if you look at this slide here, I have a stick in my hand. They're oftentimes called carrot sticks. And that helps me become more like a horse. It has the length that's similar to a horse's leg and also similar to a horse's head and neck. So it allows me to communicate with my energy more effectively to the horse's nose, hindquarter, front legs, and it helps to teach them the value of yielding away from my personal bubble. So once we have our horses understanding that they need to stay out of our personal space and not, quote unquote, run us over, we want to start to make sure that our horses can lead properly. So have any of you been in a situation where a horse leads in front of you and drags you along, or been in a situation where the horse is behind you and is possibly not following a feel of steady pressure and not keeping up to your shoulder? We want to be able to teach our horses to follow a feel of steady pressure and seek the release of pressure. So that means that we have to have a strong or a good release. And by strong, I mean understanding the value of releasing to pressure. And we want to think about, is our horse a boulder or a ball? So when we are asking our horse to lead forward, does it feel like we're dragging a boulder, or does it feel like we're pushing a ball across the arena where it's very light and very easy to push along? And it's also very important to understand the difference between leading and following. So we want to be able to test our horses on our lead lines and make sure that they're not just following us, but they can actually lead off of steady pressure. When we put a feel on the halter and lead rope, that our horses think about moving forward or left, right, backwards, and eventually even up and down. So as you can see, this horse here, my little horse Moonshine, is on the beach, and he's following a feel of steady pressure to the left with an arc and bend in his body, and putting slack in the lead line while leading forward. This is important because in our therapeutic lessons, we want the horses to be at our leader's shoulder. And if the horse isn't properly leading forward, either going too fast and walking ahead of the leader, or if it's dragging behind, it starts to put our students in jeopardy. One of the ways that we can solve this issue is by playing some psychology games, which we're going to start talking about how we can cause our horses to be inspired to want to be with us and to want to own the skill of leading and some other exercises within therapeutic riding. So one of the games that we like to play is Stick to Me. So the horse needs to understand its responsibility. And one of the ways to understand its responsibility is we show the horse where the release of pressure is. So if you look at path guidelines, the path guidelines ask that the horse's neck is at our shoulder and that there's slack in the lead line, and the horse can lead forward and stop without putting any pressure on the halter. So it means the horse shouldn't be shooting forward. It shouldn't be dragging behind us. It should be continually walking with us the whole time throughout the lesson. So we start to accomplish this by having our horses in training sessions understanding phases. So when I talk about phases, it means that we start to apply pressure gradually. And in this example, we have a student here that's with one of their therapeutic horses, and she's asking that horse to walk forward. First, her body comes into position and activates and starts walking forward. If the horse doesn't walk forward, she'll ask with her tool or a carrot stick for the horse to follow along. And eventually what the horse understands is that if we don't move forward off of the leader's energy, that she will come up with a higher phase with her stick and string, motivating the horse to come forward. But the most important part is that once the horse starts to learn its responsibility of walking forward at your shoulder, that we stop and we allow the horse to rest at our shoulder as well and start to take the pressure off our horse and maybe even give it something good. So for example, we might allow it just to stand there and eat some grass, or we might give our horse a cookie and read our horse's intention. Did they understand the exercise? Are they licking? Are they blinking? Are they blowing out? All examples that the horse is starting to think, so that they start putting more effort into their job. And again, we're evaluating if our horse is leading us, dragging, or pulling throughout this whole exercise. So one of the important things that we have to take into consideration is that we can start to break our horse down into zones. So if you look here, we have 5 zones, including one that's called the delicate zone. And the reason why it's called the delicate zone is because the eyes and ears are within that zone. But the first zone that we start to talk about starts just behind the ears and goes to the tip of the nose, and that's zone 1. Then from the poll to the top of the withers is zone 2. From the top of the withers to the top of the rump is zone 3. From the top of the rump to the tip of the tailhead is zone 4. and from the tip of the tail head out onto infinity, zone 5. The reason why these are important is because we can start to now break down our horse into body parts, and we can start to yield individually the forehand, the hindquarter, and the rib cage, both forwards, backwards, and left and right. So this helps us to establish leadership by starting to control the horse's body parts, just like a herd member would do out in the wild. So we need to also evaluate, is the horse confident when we're yielding our body parts? So are they showing signs of fear? Are they respecting it? So are they tensing up and trying to push through the pressure? Or are they trying to flee the pressure? Again, we'd go back to approach and retreat and building the horse's confidence if the horse was showing signs of fear. And if the horse is showing signs of dominance, we might continue to put pressure on that zone until they decide to yield, and yield at a phase in which there is no tension. And the reason why we start to do this is because we want to eventually be able to yield the forehand and the hindquarter, both by rhythmic pressure. And by rhythmic pressure, that means we're using rhythm out of our body and our tool, so we can eventually isolate both the forehand and the hindquarter of the horse. The reason why we want to understand rhythmic pressure is because rhythmic pressure is what horses in the wild often use to yield each other. So if you've ever seen a horse try to lift a leg and kick another horse, before it makes contact, it's actually using rhythmic pressure to ask that horse's bubble to yield. So horses oftentimes gain respect with each other through rhythmic pressure. This also translates to understanding how to follow a feel. So following a feel means that a horse can move lightly off of the lead rope, both forward, backwards, left, and right. We start to establish this both by yielding our horse's forehand and hindquarters, and also understanding that there is a difference between a yield and escape. When we are asking our horse to yield, whether it be from steady or rhythmic pressure, we want to make sure that they're not trying to escape the maneuver, so rush through the maneuver, that they're thinking their way through the maneuver. One of the ways that we can tell if a horse is thinking is that, again, they'll be blinking their eyes, they might be blowing out, their muscles are relaxed, they're starting to put more effort into our idea than we are adding pressure to the situation. And as we start to move along with having our horse understand yields, which will eventually be important as we are walking and simulating our leading, which we will do for our students, those forehand and hindquarter yields become very important when it comes to asking our horse to stay out of our personal space while yielding, and also about asking our horse to make turns both to the left and to the right. So have you ever seen a horse that could only lead on the left-hand side, but when you tried to make a right-hand turn, it didn't? Well, one of the ways that we can start to fix this is we start playing with point to point. One of the things it does is it helps develop straightness. So we pick a point in the arena and we start to walk to that point and see if our horse can put its nose on it. And by putting our horse's nose on that object, it starts to engage our horse's mind. It starts to let them know that there's a destination, a place to be. And this also starts to aid in our problem solving. So is our horse rushing past the pressure, or is it dragging behind? We can start to evaluate that by doing a point-to-point exercise. Also starting to pick new points. So for example, we might start doing left hand and right hand turns, but we will start out just like what we're doing here is we'll start out by a fence, and using a fence to help us support our point to point. So one day we can get into an arena, an open arena, and have our horses understand their responsibility without having to support them only through their lead rope. They start to understand it by focusing on where we are walking and where we are focusing. So as our point to point gets better, we're going to start to take a look at serpentines with obstacles. And one of the things that we want to remember is that this is combining both our forehand and hindquarter yields by going right and left. We're combining our stick to me exercise where our horse understands to stick to our shoulder, not because we're pulling him and leading him with the lead rope, but because they understand where their responsibility is in regarding to our energy. And we're starting to think about a point to point as well. So as we put that all together, this becomes stick to me with a focus. And we start to evaluate how well our horses understand this as a skill, or do they have ownership of this skill? Do they have ownership of the point-to-point exercises? Do they have ownership of stick to me? Do they have ownership of the forehand and hindquarter yields, both following a feel of steady pressure off the lead rope, also yielding from rhythmic pressure? So when, as in this picture here, if the leader wants to make a right-hand turn, can the horse yield to the right off of rhythmic pressure, as well as lead to the left off of steady pressure? Finally, what we want to think about as we start closing with our session or our lesson with our horse, both in training and horse development or in a therapeutic lesson, is how we say goodbye, or the salutation. So it's important to remember that the horsemanship doesn't just stay in the arena. It is everywhere that we go with our horse. So how we put our horse away is very important to the horse's perception of how things might go tomorrow. So a lot of times I see a lot of people releasing their horses at the gate. And from releasing at the gate, the horse starts to learn to walk away or even run away from the human. And so we have to start to think about, is that what we want to teach our horse? Is that he can just break the relationship and run or walk away? What we'd rather do is take our horses where they want to be. So if we're in a big pasture, we might take them to where their herd is. We might take them to a water trough or a hay pile, or it might just be a spot where our horse says, you know what, this feels like a good place to say goodbye, rather than just releasing at the gate. And as you can see here, my little horse, Mooney, is found a good spot for me to pet him and rub him on the neck and say goodbye. And how you know that this has worked is that you can walk away from your horse and your horse stays engaged in the relationship and doesn't just turn tail and run away, which also supports them being easier to catch next time. So conclusion. So why should we schedule a Horses Helping Human clinic? Well, one of the things that we've been able to do over the last year and a half is help several PATH certified centers in the Florida area with their human development as well as their horse development. We all need to make sure that our programs are speaking the same language as it applies to handling horses. So one of it is understanding horse psychology, how a horse thinks and how that relates to training. As well, we need to start to think about, can we all get on the same page with a sequential system? Because if we're all doing different things and handling the horses in different ways, what happens is that oftentimes that leads to confusion. So in our clinics, we discuss that. We discuss tools and how to handle the tools through simulations. We start to talk about working through problems and problem solving. And we also start to develop a communication using horse psychology that everyone can be a part of. So how to schedule a clinic? Well, you can contact us at wildhorsemanshipcenter.com, or you can email us at wildhorsemanship@gmail.com, and we will reach out to you and start to talk about how we can assist you in your organization. Our mission is amplifying the connection between horse and human so that all human relationships can be amplified as well. So I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, I'll be here to answer both on chat and through the live feed. Again, you can contact us at wildhorsemanshipcenter.com or wildhorsemanship@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Hi, guys. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. And I believe that we have some questions on the ownership of skills. So I would like to go into it. So basically the ownership of a skill for a horse is the horse being able to accomplish something without being micromanaged through the maneuver. So for example, if we're talking about leading and having the horse go point to point, that the horse is not deviating or going in an opposite direction. So we're not constantly having to tug or pull on the horse. It understands both with our focus and our energy where we would like to go. And so the horse now starts to own the skill of going forward and leading at our shoulder. So another question is stick to me similar as the join up from Monty Roberts? It has elements of the join up of Monty Roberts. So for example, Monty's join up method is something that allows the horse to connect to the human and come up to the human. But the stick to me is actually the horse is learning how to stick to your shoulder, just as similar to what we look for in the therapeutic riding. We want the horse to be at our shoulder as we lead forward, but we can have the horse own the skill to the point where it understands when we walk and go forward, the horse is to walk and go forward. When we stop, the horse stops with us. And when we make left-hand turns and right-hand turns, the horse can connect to us. So that is an example of that being a little bit different than the join-up method. It's a little bit more advanced. It has a little bit more communication, where the join-up method would be more similar to the horseman's handshake or the greet. Just going through some of the questions. So it says, my horses don't like to say goodbye. They follow the client around the arena, even when the client is leaving and is on the outside of the arena. So I would, Sandra, I'd like to get a little bit more clarification on what your question is. You're saying that your horses don't like to say goodbye and they follow them around follow your clients around the arena. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's showing connection. Now, if your horses are getting pushy and pushing the clients around and invading their space, that's one thing. But they're following the clients around and are curious. That's actually a great thing to have. So if you have a specific question, I'd be happy to answer it. But that seems to be pretty. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so who do you credit or are inspired by the horsemanship you teach? Well, that's an excellent question. So who's my inspiration? Specifically, one of my biggest inspirations and mentors was a gentleman by the name of Peter Fuller. His organization, Willowbrook Natural Horsemanship Center, and his family, the Fuller family, started the AQHA or helped start the AQHA and had a lot to do with their performance horse program. And he also introduced me to equine psychology empathetic leadership, and natural horsemanship. I have studied several different methods, from Buck Brannaman to the Newberts to Pirelli. Pirelli being one of my biggest influences, but also I've had a lot of influence from other horsemen that have equally as valuable information to share. Okay, when is saying goodbye? I'm sorry, this is related to the previous question. When saying goodbye, we thank the horse, say goodbye, express gratitude, etc. But kids feel sad to see the horse wanting to be with them. Okay, so now this is a good question that the kids are feeling, maybe that they are walking away from a horse that still wants to be with them. And this is where I take the opportunity to explain to the kids that the horse wanting to still be there is a good thing, and that the fact that we are saying goodbye is setting the relationship up for the next time. And the next time that we come into the arena, the horses were going to be more motivated to see each other once again, even though it might be difficult to say goodbye. No pushing. Okay. Okay. Have you seen other centers implement these methods in the context of having multiple handlers? Do they do leader trainings and have several leaders, etc.? Yes, we do leader trainings, and we've used these methods in several different centers. And as far as having multiple handlers, yes, this is the reason why that we choose to do clinics with all of their volunteers and all their volunteer handlers, so that they're all on the same sequential system, and we're not doing things differently. And this also relates to ownership of a skill. As the humans have ownership of understanding the skill and how to apply it to the horses also learn through consistency. Laura, do you have any resources available and link to those as well? We do have resources available. One of the things that we have is we have our outline of our Horses Helping Humans clinic. If you give me your email address or email your email to me, I can send you some of our information and our documentation, because a lot of these programs aren't catered and customized to the therapeutic riding industry. So that's what we've done, is we've really specialized it to the specific exercises, maneuvers, and psychology that therapeutic riding centers need, because they have unique programs, and general horsemanship isn't always often enough. Okay, we have another question. How do you disengage the hindquarters, and how do you yield the front end? So we do a front end yield, and then we also can disengage the hindquarter. The hindquarter is establishing and understanding, having the horse understand rhythmic pressure. And the reason why we want to do that is because we also want to be able to affect the horse's turning both directions. So, for example, if I'm leading a horse in a lesson, I want to be able to make right-hand turns as well as left-hand turns. So in horse development, for example, we take time to train our horses away from clients so that we can work on some of these maneuvers. We use rhythmic pressure. Sometimes we might use a lead rope to do that. Sometimes we might use a tool, such as a stick, to start to rhythmically drive with our body first, and then with our stick. And eventually we ask the horse's feet to yield. So the front feet will yield around the hindquarter, and the hind feet will yield, and the hindquarter yield around the front end. Going on to the next question. Okay, so yes, I can email any of the questions or this presentation. We will talk to Pat and get that for you guys all organized. And then also, what we're going to do is we're going to try to make this presentation available for all centers to have. So if you do have, whether it be colleagues or whether it be you want a copy of this presentation, we're going to work with PATH and see if we can have that available for you. Okay. All right, that seems like it's it. I thank you very much for attending, and I hope to see you in the future.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. So on behalf of PATH International, I would like to thank you for your participation in today's event. At the conclusion of the conference, a post-event survey will appear requesting your feedback. Please take a moment to complete this survey, as it will help PATH International plan future web events. Thank you all for joining us, and now we will have Elias Holdman, Education Representative for PATH International, say a few words.
Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me out there. So glad that we were able to have all of you in for our 2018 virtual conference. We hope you've enjoyed all of the presentations and had an opportunity to talk and chat and reference with those around you about the presentations that you saw. I'd like to first extend a huge thank you to every one of you for being a part of this. You are exactly what makes it possible for us here at PATH International to make new and advantageous education opportunities for you all. So thank you so much for being a part of that, and we hope that you will take a chance to fill out that survey and give us a little bit of feedback to help improve for the next time around. I'd also like to take this opportunity here at the end to extend a huge thank you to all of our presenters: Abby Simon, Debbie Buzanowski-Stowell, Casey Henry, Bunny Young, Kitty Stallsberg, Dr. Julie Garchow and Annie Mascaro, Elizabeth Cohen, Dr. Catherine Blankenship, Liz Girdman, and of course, our great presenter here, Chris Cook. I'd also like to extend a huge thank you to all of our breakout presenters, and we hope that you all enjoyed the opportunity to get a little bit more information packed into your day. So a huge thank you to Nancy Krennick, Dr. Ashley Phelps-Dunn, Isabel Wolf-Gillespie, Andrea Sook, Patty Lassard. A huge thank you as well to Carol Herder with Cavello, and they did offer a 50% discount to all of you that have participated in the virtual conference. A huge thank you to that, but also a huge thank you for Frankie Lovato and Equicizer for being a part of our participation in breakout rooms as well. I want to take this opportunity here at the end to remind you all that you will be receiving, as part of your registration for this conference, all of these sessions as recordings, and we're hoping to get those out, looks like around next Friday. So be looking out for that in your emails. You shouldn't need to request any of those. Those should come to all of you automatically. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to let you know that all of the handouts, if you haven't had an opportunity to download them, or if you maybe missed some from yesterday, are available on that main PATH LMS or the virtual conference website page. You can just click on whichever session you may have missed, and in the resources tab, you'll see their PowerPoint presentations as a download. So take the opportunity to grab those up as well. And I'd just like to leave you all with one final big thank you. And we really hope that we get a chance to see you all out again for our next virtual conference this year, which we'll be looking to do at the end of the summer. Thank you all so much, and we're so happy to have had you.